Okay, just for a second, picture this. Can you hear it? That sound of V8 engines just screaming at their absolute limit. And the smell, you know the one, that mix of gasoline, burnt rubber, and hot metal that just hangs in the air on a summer night. Yeah, that's the sound and smell of cars smashing into each other on purpose under the lights of a county fair. Now, this isn't just chaos. I mean, it is chaos, but it's organized chaos, and it's the uniquely American world of the demolition derby.
And if you really want to get to the heart of what this is all about, you have to start right here with this one core idea, which writer J.C. Hallman just nails. In a derby, there are no style points. There's no finish line. There is only, like he says, mayhem and survival. It's this brutal, simple, and honestly captivating idea. Just be the last one moving.
So let's get the official definition on the books. A demolition derby is, technically, a motorsport. You've got 5 or more drivers who all roll into an arena with one and only one goal: disable every other car by smashing into them. The very last vehicle that can still move on its own wins. The rules are simple, right? But the strategy and the carnage, that's a whole other story.
All right, now that we know the rules of engagement, let's kind of zoom out a bit. Because you gotta understand, this isn't some forgotten little hobby. This is a living, breathing part of American culture. It's as much a staple of the county fair as a Ferris wheel or, deep-fried anything. It really is a national subculture.
And just how big are we talking? Well, get a load of this number, 2,000. That's the estimated number of derbies held every single year just in the United States. We're talking thousands of events, pulling in hundreds of thousands of people, both drivers and fans, into this world of beautiful destruction that's kind of been hiding in plain sight.
So, how do you even get a car ready for something like this? I mean, you can't just drive your old sedan off the street and into the ring. Oh, no. There is a real art, a whole science to building a machine that's specifically designed to both give and take an incredible amount of punishment. So let's pop the hood and take a look.
Turning a regular old family car into a battlefield chariot is a serious job. First, you gut it. Everything comes out. All the glass, plastic, flammable stuff, gone. Safety is huge, so the gas tank and battery are actually moved inside the car, away from the big impact zones. The doors are welded shut for strength, and the driver's door gets painted some bright neon color. It's kind of like a little act of courtesy in a sport that's all about total destruction. And what's really fascinating is seeing how the cars themselves have changed over the years. The classic weapon of choice was always old iron. Those huge, heavy-framed, rear-wheel drive sedans from the 60s and 70s. But those things are getting super hard to find. So drivers adapted. Now you see a lot of modern front-wheel drive compacts. They're quicker, they're everywhere, and because the engine and the drive wheels are all up front, the entire back half of the car can get crushed into a pretzel, and the thing can still keep on fighting.
And this next part just shows you how seriously people take their cars. There's this one car, the Chrysler Imperial from 64 to 66, that was built so ridiculously tough, so over-engineered, that it's still banned from most competitions today. Can you imagine that? Building a car that's so good at its job that it actually gets outlawed? It was just too good at not being destroyed.
So where in the world did this glorious chaos even come from? Well, the origin story of the demolition derby it's a bit of a historical puzzle, a classic American tale where a few different people claim they invented it. So let's dig into the past and see how this whole sport was forged from twisted metal and, of course, happy crowds. Yeah, the history is a classic case of he said, he said. Some people trace it all the way back to the 30s, but the real debate is between two promoters. You've got Don Basile, who put on a race in California in 1947, where the last car running was the winner. And then you have Larry Mendelsohn, who actually trademarked the name Demolition Derby in New York in 1958. The story goes, he realized people cared way more about the crashes than the race itself. But whoever started it, the idea caught on like wildfire, and it just exploded in its golden years in the 70s, even getting national TV coverage.
And you've really made it in America when you become a plot point on one of the biggest TV shows of the decade. Pinky Tuscadero, the Fonz's girlfriend on Happy Days, was a professional demolition derby driver. That brought the crunch and roar of the derby right into millions of living rooms every week, and totally cemented its place in pop culture.
But this is where we're going to go a little deeper. Because under all that mud and noise and mangled steel, there's a really fascinating story. See, this isn't just about smashing cars for fun. There are these complex layers of psychology and economics and even politics that help explain why this whole spectacle has such a powerful, lasting grip on people.
So that really brings us to the big question, right? What does all this spectacle of destruction, what does it actually represent? Why are we so drawn to watching and even participating in this automotive anarchy? The answer is, well, they're probably not what you think. You would never think it, but the health of your local demolition derby can be directly connected to the global economy. It's actually simple supply and demand. When the price of scrap steel is high, maybe because of a building boom halfway around the world, people are way more likely to sell their old junk cars to the scrapyard for cash. But when scrap prices fall, those same cars become cheap, easy to get, and absolutely perfect for one last glorious ride in the derby arena. Now, if you're actually inside the car, the appeal can feel, well, primal. As one driver, Mike Gilbert, puts it, it's like being a modern-day Viking out there in a battle. For a lot of these guys, it's an outlet, a physical, high-stakes contest of skill and survival, in a world where you don't get many chances for that anymore. It's a chance to build something with your own two hands and then go prove yourself with it. Now, check this out. An academic view offers a completely different lens. It suggests the derby is actually a powerful form of social commentary. In this reading, drivers aren't just smashing cars. They're talking back to the system. They take the ultimate symbol of American consumerism, of technology and status, the automobile, and they just joyfully, cathartically destroy it on their own terms. And that idea of symbolic destruction has even been connected to modern politics. In the source material we're looking at, the author J.C. Hallman noted a parallel he saw back during the 2016 election. He observed that one candidate's style of smashing and ramming through the primaries seemed to echo the exact ethos he was seeing in the derby pit. Now, it's a neutral observation from the author, but it frames the derby as not just a sport, but as a potential mirror of a wider cultural mood. So, after all that, what have we really learned today? Well, we've seen that the demolition derby is way more than just a bunch of crashes. It's this uniquely American tradition born from a debatable history with a wild connection to global economics. It's a deep well of cultural meaning, a stage where you can see everything from a primal Viking battle to a form of political protest, all played out with cars. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As we spend more and more of our lives in this clean, digital, virtual world, what does it say about us that we are still so powerfully drawn to the raw, visceral, and undeniably real spectacle of a demolition derby? Is it some kind of primal need for a little controlled chaos, a cry for a more mechanical age? Or maybe it's something else entirely. The answer is probably out there somewhere, in the mud and the smoke.